G'day everyone, hopefully you can hear me all right. I've got a pretty good loud voice, so hopefully everyone can hear me. As Peter said, I'm from Natural Resources Adelaide, based out of Ceduna, and I'm going to be talking about the Warru translocation. I'm going to give it a bit of background to the project. It's probably one that people are pretty familiar with to some extent, but I'm going to sort of run through a little bit about that and then the process that led to the translocation which occurred last year. So first of all, I should actually as well make sure that I highlight this is a massively collaborative project. We've got Zoo South Australia, AP Wildland, Ecological Horizons, lots and lots of people have been involved in this for a long time, and I'm presenting this mainly on behalf of the Warru recovery team, so I don't want to obviously be taking all of this. This is not my thing, it's been going for a long time, and obviously all of the people up in the AP Wildlands, all of the traditional Anangu ranges. So a little bit about the Warru. We've got a bit of a map there. They were once widespread through central Australia. Early sort of surveys of the species found that they were pretty common. They tend to be found right through. Up until around about the sort of 1960s, they noticed that they dropped dramatically. From that point on, they sort of were isolated into two populations. So we've got one in the east. You might be able to, unfortunately that map isn't probably as clear, but you can just sort of see on the Northern Territory border there's Newell written there, and then right out in the cross where West Australia, Northern Territory corner there's Kalka. There's a population in that range as well. All of the rest of them unfortunately have gone. At the moment they're listed as vulnerable under the EPVC, and under the National Parks and Wildlife Act they are endangered. As I sort of said, they noticed that there was a huge decrease at least 40 years ago. There was lots of surveys done and people started getting quite concerned. So between 2008 and 2010, there was an estimated only 200 of them left. So as I sort of said, the eastern population, that's the Musgrave ranges, there's about 100 to 150, and possibly about 50 in the Tompkinson ranges. The reasons for this massive decline, you know, it's everything that we always hear about. You've got feral animal pressures, foxes and cats, changes in fire regimes, introduced weeds. Hunting pressures probably wasn't really much of an issue, but those really did tip them over. They probably fit into a critical weight range animal, especially young joeys, so they're quite easy food for a savvy fox. So in 2007, the Warru recovery team was formed to start to try to work on reducing the pressures on the species and start trying to address what the issues were and then reversing what was going on. And as I said, it's a collaboration between lots of entities and it's got a lot of traditional owner interest as well. It's a species that's quite important to the people up in the AP Wildland. It obviously is a good source of food when they're abundant, and they don't want to see them disappearing, and there's quite a lot of stories, Jukapa, that goes with this species, and they want to see these animals continue on into the future. So in 2007, some animals were taken from the APY and translocated into the Monado Zoo for cross-fostering. That occurred in 2007. From that point on, there was a pinchie constructed, which just means fence in Pitjantjatjara, which was 100 hectares, and the idea was to put animals back in there that were bred from the zoo into a semi-sort of wild population and hopefully to breed up. So that occurred in 2011. You can see there as well, I said the Warru recovery team was awarded the National NAIDOC Award in 2011 for the works as well. That's just an aerial shot of the pinchie. Unfortunately, it's not all of it, but you can get a pretty good idea. That sort of shows the main escarpment in the middle. It's relatively high, but it's got some really good habitat, and it was quite an easy area to fence around. There's a little pen, there's a little sort of escarpment in that far corner there, and that's the medicine pen. That was if any animals were sick, but that's all open now. That's not sort of locked off for that. So that's the pinchie. In 2011, the recovery plan came out, which is still obviously active, goes to 2020, which is what dictated a lot of the work. Between 2013 and 2015, there was a recruitment of at least 22 animals into the pinchie, so it's showing positive growth from breeding in that population, and there was an additional 6 animals taken into the pinchie from Monado Zoo. In 2016-2017, there was discussions about doing a translocation to an extinct population at Wamijara. It's also known as Sentinel Hill for anyone that's been up into the AP Wildlands, and the idea was to take some animals from the pinchie as well as from Newell. And in May 2017, we did a translocation of 40 animals. So it's not just as simple as going, all right, we want to put some Warru back onto a hill. We need to do some work and we need to have a look at the way that it all works. So as I said with the Warru, the Pinchy is trapped every year. It's trapped every March. We've just come back from a track room trip a couple of weeks ago, and the idea is to keep an idea on the population, know how it's going, see if there's any issues, and hopefully you're going to see an increase, which it was. It was noted increasing quite rapidly, and then it appeared to level off. So at that point, it looked like it had reached carrying capacity, and it was estimated sort of about 40, 45 animals in there. So there was discussions about trying to take some animals out. You don't want to get to that carrying capacity. The idea is to source population and start putting them out into areas. So discussions were had on getting these animals out. Lots of discussions on site selection. There's been people working up in the APY lands on these animals, and they've seen them in different spots, but discussions with traditional owners and with the scientists that have been involved in this program, they chose Warru. It was a very nice hill, very handy sort of area. This is just a nice shot of the hill. It's about 230 metres or so to that top dome, and there's some really nice habitat up through this area. So this was chosen as a great spot to put some Warru. Planning. So the planning was heavily influenced by work that's been done in Western Australia. There's populations of black flank wallaby. There's sort of 3 different species. The one that's in the APY lands that we're working on, it was a genotype of the McDonald Ranges one, but there's been other translocations in areas in Western Australia, and they have managed to get some really good recommendations and criteria for success, which was taken into account for our translocation. So a lot of work was looked into pre-site management. You know, you've got to address your issues. There's no point just putting them out into spots where you've got just as many problems. So looking at feral carnivores, addressing any issues with fire, and looking at weeds. The main weed up in the APY land is obviously buffel grass. And then the other key factor was regular monitoring of the species that you translocate. So you want to be monitoring to see how they're going using VHF or GPS collars. So in this case, we ended up opting for VHF collars because of the proximity. We could get to the site relatively easily and track them, hopefully relatively successly, if anyone's ready to track in big hills. So to start off with, what we did was started working on looking at working out the feral animal pressures around the site. So there's 26 cameras set up around Warru to start working out an index of how many predators were around, and then comparing it to other areas. So we compared it to areas in Newell and Kalka, and it gave us a bit of an idea. If there was more issues with feral predators, we could do some more baiting, we could do some more shooting, try to reduce that down so that it was a like-for-like sort of situation. So that was undertaken. Dingoes weren't targeted. We did that specifically to keep the dingoes in the system, to hopefully reduce fox and cat pressure, just to keep that, they're pretty good at doing that, as well as the fact we didn't want to have any dingoes taken out that may then cause new ones to come in who might be a bit more interested in roaming around on the hills and having a look. So we thought if we kept the ones in there that were hopefully not taking anything, well, hopefully roaming under the hills because there was nothing up there, that's the way that they would go. And as I got down the bottom there, we established a go, no-go criteria. So this was all discussed with the Warru recovery team. So what we were looking at, as I said, was the relative index of predators, having a look to see if they were reducing and hopefully that they were looking like they were at a level that we were happy with, and that if they weren't, we were going to delay the translocation. One of the other go, no-go criteria was looking at things like individual Warru, what we're going to do if they left the hill. There's always a chance that they're going to take off, and what we were going to do, how we were going to work them out, and how we were going to work on things like signs of mortality and how we were going to work with them. When it came closer, we wanted to move 40 animals. There was a bit of talk and trying to get some other ones in from the Northern Territory, but that'll be a story down the track a bit further. But at the time, it ended up being all South Australian, and we decided on, as a team, taking 25 from the Pinchy. As I said, we thought we had quite a lot of, well, we thought we had 45 in there, so we thought that would take a lot of the pressure out, hopefully start free breeding again, and then not to take too many away from the wild animal population at Newell, we'll take 15. So we took 25 from the Pinchy and 15 from Newell. The precise sites were selected. We chose 3 sites across the hill so that we could spread them out. We didn't want to put them all in one spot just so that when they get let out, they don't want to have them all fighting on each other or causing issues. So we chose 3 spots that were quite separate from each other, but all 3 had very good habitat. So we didn't want to put them into an area that they've got no good spots. They like really big caves, sort of certain degree of angles. They're sort of like hills that are sort of 15 to 20 degrees in slope. Obviously, source of food. They eat a lot of the fig, as well as spearbush, and making sure that they were on the right sort of aspects. So I'm just going to speed up a bit because I'm starting to run out of time. The criteria as well, we wanted to make sure that we take the right sort of animals, so making sure that they were healthy, and things like pouch status. We didn't want to take joeys that had a very small head, a bigger head, just because of the fact the female could throw that pouch young. So we made sure that all the pouch young were less than 30 mils, so they stayed with mum. That's just the spot. It gives you an idea of Newell, the Pinchy and Wamijara, and the transport between the 3. So the translocation occurred in late May. We had Warru rangers, IPA coordinators, we had APY land management, private contractors, Zoos SA staff, we had the Threatened Species Commissioner as well for a few days, which was fun. And we had 3 teams trap in the Pinchy and 3 trap at Newell simultaneously. So this is just some photos of people. We're doing a head measurement that looks probably like a pouch young, just checking to see if it fits into the criteria. Another one there, people walking across the sites. The animal's getting collared down the bottom here. We've got the Warru Minma, the elder ladies who came. They've developed a story a few years ago about it, so it was really good to get them out. I've got a photo of them holding them. So this is, a lot of the Warru were named as well, so we ended up getting the local school kids at Pukaja to choose some names. So there was ones that were Killikilkari, which is Budgerigara and Pitjantjara, all the way to Thunderdeath, Bubblegum, and they're on the hill. Thunderdeath's a very big male who's very successful. And that's just the Warru Rangers. They're just about to take up 3 wallabies, so take them up in the bags, find a cave, leave them in the cave during the day, untie the zip, and just let them come out on their free time, and they could find their own sort of ways. A few more shots of everyone working hard. It was a very popular week. It happened really, really well, and this is the only shot I have of radio tracking, unfortunately, is my ugly mug. So radio tracking, we radio tracked them daily for the first month, and then twice a week for the first 3 months, just to keep a track on them. We're just about to do another trapping. Well, the first trapping at Wamijara in quite a few years is going to happen in May, so a lot of the results are still pending. It's a little bit prim, but we want to get out there. We need to check on the collars, but overall it's worked out really well. Our criteria was to have more than 50% still alive at 3 months, and we well exceeded that. We were at 74%. We lost a few to dingoes, which is a bit of a shame, but it stabilised quite well. We're still at 28 on the hill. A couple have moved off, but we managed to bring a couple back, and they've moved some amazing distances. Into the future, I think it's going to be a very safe project. We're going to keep looking at expanding them into different areas. Jacob here is the co-chair of the recovery team. Very passionate about his Warru. He works on the west, and I think this is a good shot that shows, he's a big fella, he's as tall as me easily, how much he cares for his Warru, how much he loves them. That's about it. Thank you very much.